A broke 12-year-old gave his only jacket to a freezing man. The next morning, a millionaire was standing at his door. What happened next? Unbelievable. The sky over Memphis, Tennessee was a dull shade of grey, the kind that swallowed the sun before it had a chance to set properly. The streets were busy, but nobody really paid attention to one another. Just heads down, walking fast, wrapped in their own little worlds. 12-year-old DeShawn Briggs clutched his backpack tighter as he stepped off the city bus, the cold seeping through his thin hoodie. His breath puffed in the air as he walked the last few blocks home, his sneakers smacking against the cracked pavement. Home wasn't much, just a small, run-down apartment on the west side of the city. The paint on the door chipped every time it opened, and the heater worked when it wanted to. But his mother made sure he never went to bed hungry, even if it meant skipping meals herself. As he crossed Jefferson Avenue, something caught his eye. A man, hunched over, sitting on the sidewalk near an old convenience store. His hands were stuffed under his armpits, shaking. His coat, if you could even call it that, was more holes than fabric. People passed him without a glance, like he was invisible. DeShawn wasn't used to seeing people like this up close. He had seen folks sleeping under bridges before, but never this close to home. The man looked up for a second, his eyes tired, his face barely visible under the hood of his sweatshirt. DeShawn stopped walking. He felt inside his pockets, not much there. A crumpled dollar, a pack of gum. He had nothing to give, except his jacket. He hesitated. It was his only one. The winter was just getting started, and his mom had scraped together enough money to buy it last year. It wasn't new, but it was warm. The man coughed, curling in on himself. Without thinking too hard about it, DeShawn shrugged off the jacket and walked over. "Here," he said, holding it out. The man blinked at him, surprised. "You sure?" DeShawn nodded. "You need it more than me." The man took it, his fingers stiff from the cold. He pulled it over his shoulders, looking down at himself like he couldn't believe it. His lips parted, like he wanted to say something, but all that came out was a whisper. "Thank you." DeShawn just smiled, shoving his hands into his hoodie pocket to keep warm. "Stay safe, man." And with that he turned and walked away. The wind bit at his arms, but something in his chest felt warm, like he had done the right thing. But he had no idea that what he just did would change his life forever. DeShawn reached his apartment just as the streetlights flickered on. The hallway smelled like boiled cabbage and old sneakers, nothing new. He stepped inside, rubbing his arms to keep warm. His mother, Tanya Briggs, stood by the kitchen counter, sorting through a pile of bills. Her face was tight, her lips pressed together like she was trying to keep her thoughts from spilling out. "You all right, baby?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah," DeShawn said, kicking off his shoes. Her eyes flicked toward him then, scanning him like only a mother could. "Where's your jacket?" DeShawn hesitated. Lying wasn't something he did, at least not to her. "I gave it to someone." Tanya's hands stilled on the papers. She sighed, shaking her head. "Lord, boy, you know I ain't got money for another one." "I know," DeShawn said quickly, "but he needed it more than me." She exhaled through her nose, closing her eyes for a second. "You got the biggest heart, I swear, but sometimes I wish you'd think of yourself first." He knew she wasn't mad, just worried. That was how it always was. Money stretched thin, heat barely working, but somehow they got by. DeShawn sat down at the table, pulling out his schoolwork. His stomach rumbled, but he knew better than to ask if there was anything else to eat. He had learned a long time ago. If his mum said she already ate, it meant there wasn't enough for both of them. Still, she walked over, ruffled his short curls, and kissed the top of his head. "Proud of you, though," she murmured. Those 3 words made the cold a little easier to bear. But DeShawn had no idea that his simple act of kindness would soon bring a storm of surprises straight to their front door. The next morning, DeShawn pulled on his hoodie, the only thing keeping the cold from biting at his skin. It wasn't enough, but there was no point complaining. He grabbed his backpack and left for school. The air was sharper than yesterday, and as he walked past the corner store where he had met the man, he half expected him to still be there. But the spot was empty. Maybe he found somewhere warmer. School was the same as always, long, tiring, and full of distractions. Kids in fresh sneakers and designer jackets, laughing about weekend trips and the latest phones. DeShawn tuned it all out. At lunch, his best friend Malik noticed him shivering in line. "Man, where's your coat?" "Gave it away." Malik blinked. "You serious?" DeShawn shrugged. "Dude needed it more than me." Malik let out a low whistle. "That's wild. I mean, that's cool and all, but bro, it's cold out here." "I'll be fine," DeShawn said, even though he wasn't sure if that was true. The day dragged on, and by the time the final bell rang, all he wanted was to get home, wrap himself in a blanket, and forget how much his fingers ached from the cold. But as he turned the corner onto his block, his steps slowed. There was a car parked in front of his apartment, not just any car, a sleek, black Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows. It looked out of place in their neighborhood, like it had no business being there. And standing in front of the door talking to his mother was a man. Not just any man. The same man DeShawn had given his jacket to. But he looked completely different now. Gone were the tattered clothes. Instead, he was wearing a long wool coat, tailored slacks and polished shoes. His posture was straighter, his presence commanding. He wasn't just some homeless guy. He was somebody. DeShawn's stomach twisted. Had he done something wrong? Was this man here to cause trouble? His mother glanced up and saw him. "DeShawn, come here, baby." He hesitated, then walked up the steps slowly. The man turned toward him, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You're the young man who gave me his jacket last night," he said. His voice was deeper than before, steady, almost rehearsed. DeShawn nodded, unsure what to say. The man extended his hand. "Richard Langford." DeShawn's mouth went dry. He had heard that name before, somewhere. Then it hit him. Richard Langford, the Richard Langford, the businessman, the millionaire, the guy who had his name on buildings downtown. What was he doing here? Langford studied him for a moment, then chuckled. "You look like you've seen a ghost." DeShawn swallowed hard. I didn't think I'd see you again." Langford's expression softened. "Neither did I, but something about last night stuck with me, so I had to come back." And what he said next would change everything. DeShawn felt like the ground beneath him had disappeared. Richard Langford, the millionaire, the man whose face had been on TV, the kind of person who never stepped foot in neighborhoods like his, was standing on his porch. Not by accident, not because he was lost, but because of him. Tanya wiped her hands on her jeans, her expression still unreadable. "Mr. Langford was just telling me how he and his driver were, looking for you." Langford nodded, his sharp eyes scanning DeShawn, like he was trying to figure him out. "I didn't get the chance to thank you properly last night," he said. "What you did, it wasn't something I see often." DeShawn shifted on his feet. "It wasn't a big deal," he mumbled. Langford chuckled. "That's where you're wrong." The millionaire slipped his hands into his pockets and glanced around. "Do you know why I was on that street last night?" DeShawn shook his head. Langford took a slow breath. "I was testing people." That caught Tanya's attention. "Testing?" she asked, folding her arms. Langford gave a small nod. "I wanted to see if kindness was still out there, if anyone would stop, if anyone would care." DeShawn stared at him. "So, you weren't really homeless?" Langford sighed, shaking his head. "No, but for a moment I got a glimpse of what it felt like. And let me tell you something, son. It's cold. Not just outside, but in people's hearts. The way they walk past, the way they don't even look at you. Tanya shifted uneasily. So this was some kind of experiment. Langford met her gaze, his expression serious. It was a lesson, for me, and for the world. Then he turned back to DeShawn. But you didn't walk past. You stopped. You gave up the only warm thing you had just to help a stranger. Do you know how rare that is? DeShawn didn't know what to say. He hadn't done it to be noticed. He hadn't done it for a reward. He had just done it. Langford studied him a second longer, then took something out of his pocket. A neatly folded piece of paper. He held it out. What's this? DeShawn asked, hesitating. A letter of admission, Langford said simply. Tanya sucked in a breath. Admission to what? Langford smiled. A full scholarship to the Langford Academy, one of the best private schools in the state. DeShawn's heart nearly stopped. Langford Academy. The school where kids with parents who owned companies, not overdue bills, went. The school with state-of-the-art technology, world-class teachers, and more opportunities than he could ever dream of. Tanya's voice was barely above a whisper. Are you serious? Langford nodded. 100%. DeShawn's hands shook as he took the paper. His name was there, typed neatly at the top. Accepted. But that's not all, Langford continued, his voice calm but firm. I know how hard it is for families to get ahead when they're just trying to survive. So I'm offering you a position, Ms. Briggs. Tanya blinked. A position? Langford smiled. I own several businesses. One of them happens to be in need of a strong, reliable manager. A position that comes with benefits, stability, and a salary that can make a real difference. DeShawn's mouth went dry. His mum had been working minimum wage jobs for years, never catching a break, and now, just like that, it was almost too much. Tanya shook her head slightly, as if trying to wake herself up. Mr. Langford, this is... I don't even know what to say. Langford put a hand on his chest. Say yes. Say you'll take a chance on a new future. DeShawn felt his heartbeat hammering in his ears. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But it was. And what happened next would bring the biggest wave of emotions yet. For a moment the only sound was the distant hum of traffic. The wind had picked up, but DeShawn barely felt it. His fingers clutched the paper in his hand, his mind still struggling to process what was happening. His mother, however, looked like she had just been asked to walk on water. Mr. Langford, Tanya started, her voice careful. This is a lot. A school like that. A job. People don't just give things like this away. Langford nodded, like he expected her hesitation. You're right. They don't. He looked at DeShawn. But your son did. Tanya's lips parted, but no words came out. I don't usually explain myself, Langford continued, his tone even. I built my success on instincts, and my instinct tells me that what happened last night, it meant something, not just to me, but to him. He turned back to DeShawn. You didn't give me that jacket because you thought I could do something for you. You just saw a person in need. That's what makes you different. DeShawn's throat felt tight. Langford sighed, rubbing his chin. I grew up with nothing too, you know. That caught both DeShawn and Tanya off guard. Langford gestured toward the car parked at the curb. People see the suits, the money, the cars. They don't see where I came from. They don't see a kid who used to sleep in the back of a laundromat because his family had nowhere else to go, or a teenager who had to hustle just to eat. Tanya's eyebrows knit together. You were homeless. Langford gave a small, humorless laugh. For a long time. And you know what I learned? The hardest thing about being at the bottom isn't the hunger or the cold. His expression darkened. It's the way people stop seeing you. His words landed like a weight in the air. But last night your son didn't look past me, Langford said, turning back to DeShawn. And now, I refuse to look past him. Tanya swallowed hard, blinking back something in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Langford said simply. A deep silence settled. The weight of the moment pressed down on them, thick and real. DeShawn looked up at his mom. He knew what she was thinking. Was this too good to be true? Was there a catch? Could they trust it? But at the same time, how could they say no? Finally, Tanya exhaled sharply, pressing a hand against her forehead. Then she turned to Langford. If you're serious about this, she said, voice steady but full of emotion, then, yes. DeShawn felt his chest tighten. Langford smiled. That's what I was hoping to hear. He extended his hand. Tanya hesitated, just for a second, then took it. DeShawn didn't know whether to cheer or cry. Everything had changed in a single night, and all because he had given away a jacket. But he was about to learn that kindness doesn't just come full circle. Sometimes it opens doors you never even knew existed. The next few days felt like a dream. By the end of the week, Tanya had a meeting scheduled for her new job. It wasn't just some desk position, it was a management role. Something stable. Something that meant they wouldn't have to worry about eviction notices taped to the door anymore. And for DeShawn? The paperwork was already in motion. Langford Academy wasn't just offering him a spot. They were covering everything. Tuition, books, even transportation. It didn't feel real until he saw the uniform hanging on the back of his bedroom door. Crisp, clean, like something out of a movie. Malik nearly lost his mind when he found out. Bro, you're about to be rich. DeShawn laughed. Nah, man. Just blessed. Still, there was a part of him that couldn't stop thinking about something. Something bigger than just him. A week after the offer, he asked Langford to meet him at the same corner where they had first crossed paths. It was colder now, the wind sharper, the streets just as busy. Langford showed up in another sleek black coat, hands tucked into his pockets. Didn't expect you to call me back so soon, he said with a smirk. Something on your mind? DeShawn looked around. Yeah. He kicked at a loose rock on the sidewalk. I've been thinking. There were a lot of people who walked past you that night. Langford nodded. That's true. But I bet some of them wanted to help, DeShawn said, his voice steady. They just didn't know how. Langford raised an eyebrow. Go on. DeShawn took a deep breath. You gave me a chance when I wasn't expecting one. What if we did the same for other people? Not just like writing checks, but really helping. Setting up something where folks like me, people who don't have much, can get a shot. Langford was quiet for a moment. Then slowly, a smile stretched across his face. You're not just thinking about yourself, he said, more to himself than anyone else. DeShawn shrugged. Guess not. Langford exhaled, then clapped a hand on DeShawn's shoulder. All right, kid. Let's build something. And just like that, an idea was born. Not just a scholarship, not just a job, but a movement. A way to give back, to create something that would last longer than one good deed. All from a single jacket. As DeShawn stood there, watching the city move around him, he realized something. Kindness wasn't just about what you gave, it was about what you started. If this story moved you, remember, acts of kindness don't have to be huge. Sometimes the smallest gesture can change a life. So look around. Help when you can. Because you never know when one moment of kindness might be the start of something bigger.